Holosun AEMS versus AEMS MAX. What's the difference? Should you upgrade from your AEMS to an AEMS MAX? Should you get the AEMS MAX? Should you get the AEMS? These are questions we're going to answer in today's video. And as always, if you want to pick up these optics or accessories for them, you can head to the link in the description, defensedistributors.com. The AEMS is an optic that Holosun released a while ago, AEMS. It's a box-style red dot enclosed emitter. It's got flip covers on this version of it, and it's become a pretty solid optic over time. They've made a lot of iterations to it and changes, come up with new variations of it, but the AEMS, from its original design, is a pretty awesome optic, and it's been well tested at this point. The AEMS MAX was announced a little over a year or 2 years ago, and essentially what it looked like on paper at the time was they took the AEMS and they just made it bigger. And if you're looking at these side by side, that might look like exactly what they did. But the truth is there's a couple more changes to the AEMS MAX that are below the surface and are a little harder to see without actually having it in hand. So let's get into the similarities first between these optics. A lot of those are probably already obvious at this point. They look very, very similar. They both have the box style. They both have clear flip covers. The buttons are in the same place. The turrets are in the same place. They both have solar panels on top. The mounts are similar. There are some differences. The heights of them is actually the exact same, and we'll go into that later and why that is a little different than it might seem. But the height is the exact same overall. And the settings in them are also the exact same. The reticles are the same. The modes are the same. The daylight settings versus night vision settings are the same. This optic, the AEMS MAX, is pretty much a clone of the AEMS. But then we start to get into some of the little nuanced differences between them and why you might want one versus the other. First off, size and weight. The AEMS MAX is a considerably bigger red dot than the AEMS, and that's something that should be taken into consideration for your specific setup. Do you want the extra size and weight? Sometimes the window size is much needed, but there is a trade-off with that. The AEMS weighs around 3.9 ounces, and the AEMS MAX weighs around 10.4 ounces. That's almost a 3 times size or weight increase from the AEMS to the AEMS MAX, and that's something you need to consider for your specific setup. Is that something you can live with for the larger window size? The mounting height. These mounts are similar, and the heights are the exact same of the entire optic package, but the height of the reticle is different between them. This is because when you add size to the window and don't add height, you are forced to drop down the center point of that window, and so the center point of the optic shifts. The AEMS is at a lower 1/3 mount height, which is approximately 1.63 inches tall, and that's a pretty standard height for red dots of this nature across the board. The AEMS MAX is at a height of around 1.4, which is an absolute co-witness. So it's going to sit lower on your rail. Now, you could totally use Picatinny risers to make these higher, or you could use mounts made for the AEMS, which also make it higher. There's less of those, probably none at this time of recording this video, available for the AEMS MAX. But an entire Picatinny riser, we carry a bunch of those on defensedistributors.com, will rise up your whole system, won't really be a problem. So that's not much of a consideration to actually think of, but out of the box, your reticle heights will be different. The AEMS does not feature a QD, and the AEMS MAX does add a QD to the attachment system right here on the side. That's something that you might want or might not want. Some people really like a QD because it allows them to quick swap their optics, and some people say, I've never taken the optic off of my rifle, so why would I need that? That's just something for you to consider specifically for your use case and where you're putting your optic. And parallax. Parallax is something that occurs in your red dot where shifting side to side or your eye position will move the dot's position on target, and this is an important feature to consider. The AEMS has pretty standard low parallax for a red dot of its size. If you're looking at something really close, yes, parallax will become more noticeable. At distance, it becomes less noticeable. And the AEMS MAX has standard parallax, but definitely more than the AEMS. This is understandable because as you increase window size, your parallax is going to go up. That is just what happens across the board. So that's only really a problem if you're really intending on making precise distant shots with this, which is not actually what I believe the intended use case of the AEMS MAX is. And those are the big differences between the two systems. So what's the actual use case for the AEMS MAX? Why would you want to buy it over the AEMS? Why would you want to buy the AEMS? The AEMS is a pretty standard box style red dot. You're going to get some good window size in there. You're going to get some flip covers. You're going to get reticle selection. It's a pretty great red dot out of the box. The AEMS MAX, I believe, has an entirely different purpose than the AEMS. And considering everything we've talked about, it changes the reason I might use it. This might be an optic you consider for closer range or CQB scenarios because the window size is much, much larger on it, and that gives you more awareness and field of view through that red dot. Maybe that's something you consider. This would fit a role really well on a drone, maybe a shotgun to shoot down a drone or something, because again, the window size is very, very large, and typically the pattern of shooting a shotgun is a lot larger, and so you could use one of the larger reticle options, and you wouldn't need those precise shots that maybe a smaller red dot is designed for or leans towards more in actuation. Again, these are all nuanced use cases. You can really fill in the blanks with whatever your specific situation is and your needs. These are just potential options you might want to look into. I also think this could perform an incredibly interesting role in a machine gun optic. We've all seen, or maybe you haven't seen, but you should look it up, the giant machine gun optic from Trijicon, the big red dot, and it's a big red dot. And you'll find these on a lot of larger weapon systems because they want to increase their field of view and don't need a ton of magnification, because when you're shooting that thing, you're gonna lose your field of view through that magnifier anyway. So a red dot like this has a lot bigger field of view, and when you need a weapon system like that to have more awareness downrange and field of view, you might be focusing on multiple targets. Having that extra window size can really be helpful. So those are just some of the potential use cases I think that the AEMS MAX can fill, but it's going to come down to what is your specific setup, what are you using it for. I think these are both really interesting red dots, and there's a lot of potential in various setups. It just comes down to what do you need for your use case. And if you want to pick up either of these or risers for them, magnifiers for them, whatever, you can go to defensedistributors.com.